I think overall, the narrative that has been kind of peddled for the last very long time, I will just generously say the last 50 to 60 years, since probably around the time of the end of World War II in America, has grown into what I like to call more of a football match than anything else, where it's one team versus another team, and it's that team sucks.
Agreed.
We can't listen to anything that team has to say. They get violent, they get nasty, and the whole point, I feel, to have, if we're going to have separate parties, which the Founding Fathers didn't really want, if we're going to have separate parties, the whole point should be compromise, and there's very little compromise. Even currently, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is a salesman by nature. He's a businessman by nature. And even I feel there's no compromise that's kind of being properly instituted in American politics. And I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm saying it's because of the whole of what politics in America has generally become over the years. Not even somebody who, you know, a salesperson by profession is supposed to compromise what the buyer and the seller, you know, want, and kind of blend the needs together for either selling a product or a service. And I feel like even a salesperson in the highest position of office can't even kind of blend together the rhetoric on both sides to a nice compromise position. And I guess we could segue into that.
Yeah, and when you have two extremely opposing sides with no compromise, there's little discussion going on then on how to compromise. It doesn't even get brought up. So I think that itself is a huge problem.
Yeah, and the American people are the ones who end up hurting at the end of the day, because it's
Yeah.
definitely not the political ideologues or the people in power. They get paid ridiculous amounts of money for doing very little work. I've worked in the government sector. They're not the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Active? I guess that's the best word to say. They can clock in, clock out whenever they feel. They have regulated breaks. They get paid massive amounts of money. And of course, you know, this goes into the whole spectrum. But timelines for them, urgency for them is kind of put on a back burner. Why should we care? Why should we worry about kind of getting projects or policies started when we can just kind of, you know, meander through, waste everyone's time, but still make $200,000+ a year, or
Yeah.
or six figure income? And I feel as though they've almost run a monopoly on making decisions because they don't have any specific need or urgency. That's why a lot of the issues never get resolved.
On the flip side, and this is only coming from my personal experience, when I was working as a political journalist in Albany, and I would go to a lot of these big events and these big like campaigning rallies. I have to say, some of the best days for me, even as a photojournalist being there, were when that you had people from both sides at these events fighting for the same thing, and for whatever the event may have held, they're fighting for the same thing but in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really positive aspect of politics, was that experience.
I think that's the spirit of what you guys were talking about, the compromise and what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Where the idea is, okay, we can come to some agreement on some basic good things that we want to give to people of this country. And now the question is, how do we do those things? And for a long time, that was generally the atmosphere of politics in this country when it came to compromise. I mean, it's a pretty subjective example, but like when I was a kid, and I don't know how much you guys like remember this or how much you can like agree with this, but when I was a kid, I generally had the overall impression I had about politics in this country was, okay, there's the Democrats and the Republicans, and they both want to do good stuff, but they have different ideas on how they're going to do the good stuff, and they don't really like each other, but they're willing to give and take a little for their personal agendas. I didn't think agenda because I don't even think I knew that word, but
Right.
for their personal goals and everything, in order to give a good to a bigger number of people.
They're willing to settle.
It's like that, and that's how generally I thought of politics when I was a kid, and I feel like that's generally what the atmosphere was. But now, it's a constant game of I have to get even more rooted in the more extreme versions of my ideology.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to do that because otherwise your side is going to uproot me. And on top of that, it's this whole narrative that's constantly being played out of the other side isn't just different from you, and they don't just think differently from you, they're evil.
Yes.
And that's a huge problem because, like, now you're just saying that there's a huge, like, half the population is just evil. It's like, okay, that's a great country to live in. And then two, if they're evil, then you don't have to actually think or talk about or go through or criticize or explain or any of that, any of their points or beliefs or views, any of them, because they're evil.
Yeah.
Why would you do that to an evil person?
Yeah.
It's a great point when you bring up the opposing sides, because it's just a huge distraction, I think, overall.
Definitely.
When it comes to solving like a lot of these big problems that we're trying to get done and fixed. So it's not a good way of going about it.
That football example was so good because that's literally what it is.
That's what it is
That's
now.
the mentality that people have, where it's like, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, you suck, I hate you.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. Get out. Just get out. It's like that's never going to lead to anything good. And on top of that, it's
Rich,
like,
you mean that there's not going to be like people with jerseys like that are red and blue? One's got a donkey on the back.
yeah, they're gonna get together.
An elephant on one.
And just like after a football game, they're gonna get into a massive fist fight in the parking lot. Yeah, that's generally how it goes.
That's generally how it goes.
But then it's almost like, going off that, I guess in a way, if we're the people in the stadiums and they're the teams, then it's like the federal government, the appointed positions, all the bureaucratic positions that aren't elected, they're not chosen by the people, they're basically the NFL. It's like they get to win. They still get to tax us.
Yep.
They still get their salaries.
Yep.
They still get their pensions. They
Yep.
still get their times off. They get all of that stuff. We had no say in it whatsoever.
We just get aggravated.
We just get aggravated, and we get aggravated at each other. That's the worst part. Is that we're not even mad at the people who aren't doing anything. We're mad at each other for picking the people that aren't doing anything.
That is a perfect analogy.
Oh hey! Didn't see you there. Thanks for watching our video. If you like this one, make sure you like and subscribe. And you also comment and have some conversations in that comment section. Ring that notification bell. And don't forget to support us on Patreon, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and all the other stuff. Thanks once again.